Hello, I'm Ritchie Knox, and you are tuned into Virtuous Teacher. Thank you for clicking on this content. And in this episode, I'll be asking a very important question. Do your students believe you? All right. And what I mean by that is, have you successfully created buy-in? And for those people who don't know what buy-in is, it's when whoever you're talking to, teaching, supporting, whoever your employees are, it just depends on the context. But in this case, have you successfully gotten your students to believe in whatever you're trying to give them, teach them? When you call them a scholar, are they buying into that? Because when they buy into that, they'll behave like scholars. If they're not buying it or buying into it, then they'll continue to do what they're doing because they don't really believe in what you're selling. They don't believe in you believing in them. Maybe they might look at it as, okay, they're just doing their job to get a check. But when you can successfully create buy-in, it kind of supersedes the money. It supersedes whatever you're going to get monetarily. It's like, I believe that Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so truly believes in me. And as such, I'm buying in. I'm going to buy it. It's kind of like a commercial, right? Anytime a commercial comes on, you have to make a decision whether or not you want to buy whatever that commercial is pitching. It's no difference when you're talking about education. Are your students buying what you're selling? That is the question that we're going to be talking about in this episode. Now, before we do, please check out the descriptions area. Also, you have to check out the new Virtuous Teacher merch. Yes, you got to check it out. You can buy that at bhshirts.com or email me at merch@virtuousteacher.com. Now, here we go. Let's say you are a teacher who has not successfully created a buy-in culture. Your students come in, they don't listen to you, which clearly indicates they're not buying what you're selling. They don't listen to you and you don't really know where to go and you need some help. That's where this episode will be very vital to your progress moving forward. First off, whatever you do from a space of love. All right. What I mean by that is if you're teaching your subject, teach your subject like you love it. Understand your subject. Now, this might seem pretty obvious, but I do want to make sure I communicate that I understand that some people are in different situations. Some people are only teaching a subject because there was a vacancy. Some people only picked a subject to study in college because it was the easiest thing. And if you are doing that, then perhaps when you're teaching, it can come across as if you're just kind of phoning it in. My situation is a perfect example. I selected my subject because it was the one thing I could do without really trying that hard. I was a young guy, right? But I've grown to really appreciate educating students on my subject matter. But do whatever you're going to do from a space of love. That includes correcting their bad behavior. You're not doing it to make them feel bad. You're not doing it to embarrass them. You're doing it because you love them. You care about them. I mean, think about that. And before you get cringed out, yes, I said do it like you love your students. You know, there is a such thing called agape love. It is the basic love that you want to give everybody. It's not about romance or anything overtly sexual. It's about just caring for one another. I mean, is it really strange to think that as people, we should love each other because by loving each other, we'll actually want to see each other do better. When you start to look at some of the crazy things that's going on in terms of, look, I don't want to get into any political debates, but the point is, wouldn't the world be a better place if we all loved each other? I'm not talking about an inappropriate love or the kind of love you would share between husband and wife, or even the kind of love you would share between mother, father, and kids. I'm just talking about basic love for humankind, loving each other. And if you do it from love, I do think that your students will pick that up. And think about it this way. If you love what you're teaching, they're going to love what they're learning. Doesn't that make sense? That just sounds like 1 + 1 = 2, in my opinion. The next thing you can do to create buy-in and make your students believe you, help students when you're not asked to. All right, this is a extremely important concept. You know, as teachers, we do help our students. We're trying to get them to a different space, to a different level of learning and understanding of the subject matter. But are you doing those intangible things, those things that don't have to be done? All right. And I am absolutely terrible at doing things outside of my classroom. You won't see me volunteering to help the dance department create flyers. Now, you won't see me do that. But I reserve my energy for my students. When you walk into my classroom, I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that you're successful. And here are some examples. Extending due dates. Look, I know my students have tons of classes and sometimes they might fudge a due date. They might miss an assignment. So I'll give them extensions because I don't want them to fail. It kind of goes back to my first point. Whatever you do from a space of love. It makes them feel like, you know what? Mr. Knox actually cares about my success, because he could just give me an E because I missed the due date. Well, no, he's giving me more time. Giving out makeup work is another way that you can help students, even if they're not asking. Sometimes students will ask for makeup work, but then sometimes they'll just take their E and keep it moving. Well, you know what? You can go the extra mile and say, hey, I want you to make that assignment up. You can give reminders. Hey, don't forget, class, next class we have this, that happening. You don't want to miss this because this could happen. Those kind of things start to make students realize, oh, this teacher actually cares about me because they're reminding me of something. One thing that I do that I believe definitely suits this particular point is I do grade scans. If you don't know what a grade scan is, it's at the start of every week. You ask the class, hey, is there anyone who wants to know what their current grade is? I'm not sure if you remember being young and not knowing really what you had until you got your report card. And it could be different for you, but for me, I never really knew what my grade was in the class. It was very terrifying when I got my report card. But I do grade scans so that there is no mystery. I'll openly ask students, do you want to know what your grade is? And if so, raise your hand. A student will raise their hand. I'll tell them, hey, you have a B, you have a C, you have a D, you have an E. Then I'll say, here's how you improve it. This is not about embarrassment. This is about transparency. Hey, yes, you have a D. You're missing this homework assignment, that homework assignment, this homework assignment. And guess what? You can still submit it. Bam. All right. That shows them that this teacher cares about me. He's telling me the truth. He's telling me what I have. He's not sugarcoating it. He's not trying to surprise me. Not only that, he's telling me what I'm missing so that I can submit it. And he's not going to take any points away from me for submitting my work late. Doesn't that just seem like I care? I feel like it does. Show that you care. If they don't think you care, they won't buy in. I think that point goes perfectly with what I just said. Show them that you care, correct their bad behavior. Give them reminders. Allow them to turn in work later. Give them inspiration. Tell them that they're doing a good job. Give them positive feedback. Give them positive reinforcement. All these things work together to create buy-in. Be stern. This is my next point. Be stern. It generates respect. Without respect, there is no buy-in. And let me tell you something. You have to be stern. You have to stand on your principles. You have to stand on your procedures. If you say something is something, it has to be something 100 times out of 100. When you stand on your business, when you are stern with these students, it does create an environment of respect. If you say you have to get here on time, you have to use appropriate language, and then you back it up with accountability measures and consequential measures, it definitely shows that you say what you mean and you mean what you say. And once the students respect you, it's so much easier for them to buy in. If students don't respect you or you're waffling on your procedures quite often, that can absolutely detract from the respect. And if that is the case, you're probably not going to get them to buy in. Be consistent with classroom procedures. They're more likely to buy in if they're sure about what they are buying. Have you ever saw a commercial or advertisement or saw a picture of a product that you liked? You thought it was a pretty cool product, but you just wasn't sure that you wanted to buy it because, there was information omitted or you didn't quite understand how it worked. You like it. You have general interest in it, but for some reason, you're just not buying it because something seems off. Well, I think that you can squash that issue when it comes to students and buying in by being consistent with your classroom procedures. Okay, let me ask you some basic questions that I hope you can answer. How often do you give homework per week? Is it the same amount every week? If not, it should be. What day do you give out homework and what day do you collect it? Is it the same every week? If not, it should be. How many assignments do you give your students per week? Is it the same per week, or does it change every week? I would say you would like to store, it's best to strive for a more consistent number, because consistency breeds confidence. I know what this teacher is going to do. Let me tell you, the worst thing that we've all experienced is a surprise. I mean, you come to class, you don't really know what the teacher's going to do. It changes every single class. Then they tell you have a quiz. You don't remember the quiz. Then they say, pull out your homework. You don't remember the homework being there. They say this week you had 2 homework. It's just crazy, right? It's like when you are able to sustain an environment of consistency, it allows the student to gain more confidence because they know exactly what's coming their way and they can trust you. And of course, trust creates buy-in. One of my favorite places to shop is Amazon, and I buy from them all the time. I'm completely bought in when it comes to Amazon, but it's because I trust them. It's always the same experience. I click on my picture, I look at a couple reviews, I click, put in cart, I buy it, it's there in 2 days, every freaking time, and it's amazing. And because of that, I'm bought in, and it's hard for me to buy out of Amazon at this point. They have so much of my money, it's crazy. All right, anyway. The next point is call parents when behaviors shift downward. At some point, you will successfully create buy-in. And if you think that they're going to stay bought in, I think you might be mistaken. Yes, I love shopping at Amazon and buying things from Amazon.com. But the minute they start to shift downward, it's nothing for me to go and just hop into Walmart real quick. But what allows me to stay bought in when it comes to Amazon is their consistency over time. So I would say call parents when behaviors shift downward. For example, you've been working with the student and they're doing a great job. They're turning in all their homework and, they're basically a good student for the most part. But then one day they start to get out of their seat, use profanity. And you're like, what is going on with this student? They're usually pretty good. But because they're usually pretty good, that should not give them a green light to start breaking procedures in the classroom. No, call their parent just like you would call any other parent. I've done that before. I've had to, over the last 3 days, contact parents of students who never get in trouble. And they were extremely shocked. They were shocked, like, wow, like I never thought I would be a student getting my parent called by Mr. Knox. Usually I'm sitting and watching him, give consequences to other students. But finally, or I shouldn't say finally, this time it's me, and I think that helps sustain or create buy-in, not only from that student to kind of re-buy back in, like, hey, maybe you forgot what we were doing or what we stood for in this classroom, but it also creates buy-in or strengthens the buy-in from other students who are looking at the situation like, oh, wow, Mr. Knox will call anybody's parent. He will give consequences to everyone, anyone. There is no favoritism. Okay, that is how I think so. I think it's how you create buy-in. No one wants to deal with parental calls when they can simply do the right thing. I want to quickly touch on this particular topic. Calling parents is such an effective way to create buy-in because you give out procedures. For example, you say no one can walk out of class without permission. That is your procedure, right? And then you get a student who wants to push against that procedure and they walk out. Well, guess what? You call their parents and, they get home and their parents say, hey, I heard you walked out of class today and there's consequences at home. They come back in the next time. Guess what? They're not going to try that again, which means they have to buy into your procedure, which is you cannot walk out of class without permission. And why is that such an important concept? Because it keeps them safe. You see what I'm saying? So parental calls are extremely effective because there's only so much you can do when it comes to students, right? You can give them consequences, you can do write-ups, all that. And a lot of that means nothing if their parents are not involved, all right? But when you call their parents, you have to understand that their parents have the manual to this student. They know exactly how this student functions and works. They know what they like and what they dislike. So why not call and get some help with some of your more challenging scholars? Why would you not want to do that? And I think once you show that you're willing to go to that particular, space with them, like, hey, I'm not going to allow you to disrupt the environment. I'm not going to allow you to walk out and create a ruckus and things like that. When you show I'm prepared to deal with you via a phone call, I think Most students, not all, but most students will say to themselves, I don't want to go through that phone call again. I don't want to go, have that situation occur again. Because most times, all right, I'm not sure if this is always true, but most times, one phone call can definitely get the process going. And here's how. They go home. The parents say, I got a call about your language. I got a call about you walking out. And you know what they're going to say? They're going to give an excuse. And most parents are going to say, you know what? I'll buy that excuse this time. But if I get a second call, it's going to be a problem. So when a parent says that, they come back to your classroom and they're on their best behavior because they already saw that you're prepared to call their parents, right? And they don't want to let their parents down. They don't want to discredit themselves. If they say, I didn't really do anything, but then a second phone call comes in from either you or another teacher, that creates a whole lot of problems for them. And I know that. All right, I've been a student before. So that is how I believe parent calls help sustain a positive culture, which I believe is a product or a byproduct of buy-in. Okay, anyway, next, be open about expectations. Nothing creates buy-in like being open about what you expect from them. You have to explicitly talk about your expectations, explicitly discuss what you want to see from them. Even today, several times, I told students specifically, I don't see you working. You should be doing this. You should be further along. You should have, you have to explicitly give directions and certainly provide them intelligence as it relates to your expectations. They don't know what you expect. Your expectations are just things that you see, things that you understand. They're your visions. It's not necessarily theirs, right? It's kind of like being in a relationship and, you're more than fine to just kind of do the status quo, but you don't really know what your spouse's expectations are. What do they expect? How do you learn their expectations? It's when they sit down and they tell you, hey, I expect you to open the door when I am behind you. I expect you to sleep on this side of the bedroom so you can protect the house. You know what I mean? Like, I expect roses once a month. If you don't explicitly state your expectations to your students, they won't know them. All right, because they can't read your mind. You have to explicitly point that out. Explicitly tell students what you expect from them. Let me ask you some easy questions. What do you expect from your students? Like, what are the top 3 to 5 things that you expect for your students? The top 3 or 5, the top things. Okay, for me, I expect my students to be quiet when I'm talking. So you know how many times I've told them I expect you to be quiet when I'm talking? A lot, because I have to explicitly state my expectations and continue to reinforce them. I expect my students to use positive language. That means no profanity. And not only no profanity, I expect them to, when they're engaging in conversations, to talk about things that are appropriate to the classroom environment. So guess what? I've said that to them explicitly, to individuals and as a whole. Right. So these are just a few of the expectations I've placed upon my scholars. I expect them to do their homework at least once a week. So, yeah, these are all things that I've verbalized to my students. And the question is, have you properly and explicitly verbalized your expectations to your students? Next, remove all traces of favoritism. We all have our favorite students. You know how it goes. You ask a question. Everyone's quiet, but then your favorite student pops up and they answer the question. It's always fun, but you have to remove that, because once you create an environment of favoritism, nobody's going to buy in. Okay. I mean, have you ever been in a situation where you're number 2, you're number 3 as it relates to trying to impress someone? It's like, you know what? She or he is not paying me any attention. They don't care about me. They only care about so-and-so. You know what? It's fine. I'll just sit back and watch the show. But when you remove all traces of favoritism and you treat everyone the same, I'm not saying that you're not human and that you can't keep your favorites inside, right? But at the same time, you don't want to ever make a child feel like someone is the best or the favorite. Or you certainly don't want a child to feel like, or a student rather, to feel like you don't like them. That is very, very difficult to overcome as it relates to creating buy-in. Once a student thinks you don't like them, it's pretty much a wrap. They're not going to do much in your class. They're not going to give you an easier time. They're going to pretty much just do what it takes to get in and out that class, or worse, they're going to create an environment that, disrupts your class. So I would say work on removing bias. I think that's just a basic fundamental educational concept. You don't want to have any bias when it comes to either your students or, matter of fact, anything. You want to always be open, right? Anyway, fairness creates believability. When students notice that all consequences apply to all students, that makes them believe you. That makes them believe in you. And once they believe in you, they buy into you and what you're selling. Okay. So I'll give you a pretty decent example. Let's say a commercial is advertising a product. Well, you want that commercial, or at least that business, to make you believe that that product is also for them. Because once they feel like, hey, they're not even thinking about our demographic. Once they feel like that, they won't buy your product. Am I right or wrong? Like, something comes out and they're clearly marketing a particular demographic. If you're not within that demographic, what are you going to say to yourself? This is not fair. I don't care about this product. TV off. But if that business can effectively make everyone, or make you feel included in what they're pitching and what they're selling, that is what creates the whole buy-in phenomenon. And you have to be the exact same way in the classroom. You have to remove this whole bias or favoritism thing and make sure everyone feels like you're embracing them and you love them, you care about them at the same measure. And I think that's the secret sauce. All right. That being said, that's all I have. Hopefully your students believe you when it comes to you creating buy-in within your classroom. And, if not, watch this video again, listen to this episode again, because I'm sure 1 or 2 or 3 or all of these things will help with that process. Okay. With that being said, thank you for tuning in. Throw a like on the video, a 5-star review on the podcast. Look out for me, help me out. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.